back to coverage here at GP Phoenix. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Eduardo Sajglik, and we are all set for the final. Steve Locke playing humans, coming in the first seed. He's playing against Pearson Laughlin in third seed, coming in on Jund. Can you break down the matchup for us here, Eduardo? We've got, the kind of classic grindy mid-range deck in Jund, and then a disruptive quick clock deck with humans.
Yeah, so this matchup, usually Jund, it will be the deck that's trying to get into the longer game. Bloodbraid Elf is a card that allows you to pull ahead on cards. So Pearson, if you're seeing the turns last, Pearson tends to be the one that's favored. Really here, it depends how Pearson can line up his removal to deal with Steve's threats. For this first game, Steve gets out Aethervial. He's really looking to go on the front foot and be as aggressive as possible. When we're going to go into games 2 and 3, it's possible that a number of these Aethervials, if not all of them, go out because Steve can go fast, but he needs to go toe-to-toe with the fact that Jund is very good at trading 1-for-1. Aethervial is not the best card when you just have access to 1 or 2 cards in hand because your opponent's disrupting, lightning bolting, fatal pushes. And you can see with his Inquisition here. From Pearson's side, I kind of like taking the Champion of the Parish. The only 1-drop in Steve's hand massively slows him down and gives you time. If we don't see the Champion be taken, I would see something like the Lieutenant rather, and the Mantis Rider. Since these are threats that can be a problem. I don't think Meddling Mage is too bad for Pearson, since without a Kitesail Freebooter, there are enough answers in Pearson's deck to deal with it. I think on average we're going to see Champion of the Parish be taken unless Pearson has access to a ton of removal. In which case the Thalia's Lieutenant will probably be taken.
Okay, he's taking a look now. We see Pearson taking a good think about what he wants to do here. He comes from California, and he's been playing Jund for a long time, but had never cast a Bloodbraid Elf before round 1 of the tournament. He said, I had to see what all the hype was about, and he's a believer now. The hype was real. Bloodbraid Elf is the truth. And what did he end up taking? Wow, Meddling Mage.
Right, so the card I said, probably the least likely take. So let's break this one down. And Steve's probably thinking, why was Meddling Mage taken? I don't have information on Pearson's hand, and he is running free copies of Lightning Bolt, free copies of Fatal Push, an Abrupt Decay, and a Maelstrom Pulse. So there's a lot of different removal spells. There's also Kolaghan's Command. That would be just devastating on Aethervial plus Creature. So what's going on? Steve is probably going to figure out Pearson most likely doesn't just have one removal. Whatever removal spell he sees is probably going to be a duplicate in Pearson's hand. Pearson wouldn't take Meddling Mage if he had access to Fatal Push plus Lightning Bolt, but he might take it if he had access to 2 copies of either of these cards. And it seems like he has 2 copies of Lightning Bolt. No. Again, seeing Pearson's hand, I'm actually pretty surprised then at the take of Meddling Mage. I saw a Thoughtseize, which you will have to fire off if he wants value out of that, because between the Vial...
Ooh.
Yeah, and this is going to be very fast. And
wow, this clock is going to be perhaps overwhelming because we could easily see Mantis Rider hit here.
I mean, we're going to see both cards hit. Mantis Rider plus the Lieutenant is a ton of damage.
This is absurd.
Right.
How big is that Goyf right now? 3-4?
Yeah, 3-4. Free cards, 3 different types.
Too small.
Yeah, it's not going to be able to block very profitably. The Champion of the Parish, both Champions of the Parish will gain we'll go +3/+3 through +1/+1 counters. Basically, the Mantis Rider gives 1. The Lieutenant's a human and has an ability, gives 1 as well. And this is going to allow Steve to bash in for a ton of damage, which, again, makes me wonder, why do you take Meddling Mage when you need to deal with already a problem that's apparent? I mean, Steve also got fortunate in drawing that second Champion of the Parish. That was actually a really key draw.
Yeah.
That was the last turn where that card would have been relevant, and it was perfect here.
This is absurd. Look at this. Laughlin's like, how much am I taking?
Well, the answer to that question is 13. And yeah, and this is why... Yeah, and this is why I really disagreed with when my original assessment. I was like, I don't think he'll take Meddling Mage. And Pearson got. I mean, I think Steve was favored even by taking one of the other cards, but Meddling Mage was the lowest priority when Steve has is on the front foot, and that's it.
That is unbelievable. That is game 1 going to Steve Locke. He says, just like I drew it up, effectively a nut draw through a hand disruption spell.
Yeah,
and Pearson Laughlin, all he could do was cast at Tarmogoyf afterwards, and the game's over.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was just very surprised by that Medley Mage, and he got punished so fast.
He really did.
This is the modern format we've been seeing all weekend long.
Oh
Every
my
time
God.
someone, it feels like you and me when we're in the booth and we see someone make maybe not an error, but like a decision that might be questionable or could
Risky
have
or whatever,
or
yeah.
is risky.
Uh-huh.
They almost instantly get punished.
Yes.
It's like
it has been a
instant.
justice weekend all the time.
Much
Yeah.
fiery justice, actually.
Yeah, we even saw that too. Get a little 4-for-1 earlier today.
And Pearson's even set up for an aggressive matchup like this. It's just seen in his discard suite. Rather than running more Thoughtseize as like these Jund decks have been doing in the run-up to the weekend because they want to deal with Bloodbraid Elf, they want to deal with Jace, he's running 4 Inquisition of Kozilek, 2 Thoughtseize, take less damage.
Let's talk about the sideboard options for Pearson Laughlin. His sideboard is 1 Abrupt Decay, 2 Grudge, 2 Anger of the Gods, 2 Collective Brutality, 1 Grim Lavamancer, 2 Finks, a Pulse, a Thoughtseize, a Thrun, and 2 Tireless Tracker.
Okay. So out of here, everything that interacts with the board is something that Pearson's interested in. Abrupt Decay, the 2 Angers are stellar, by
Those
the
are
way.
the nut, yeah.
They weren't good there, but with Disruption, it's okay. The Grim Lavamancer, the humans deck can not easily deal with that. It's actually a really big problem for them. The 2 Kitchen Finks, those are like the marginal-ish card. Like the life gain, the board presence is nice, but you're worried about Mantis Rider, you're worried about large creatures. So Kitchen Finks doesn't necessarily line up against humans well, but it is a resilient threat. It does gain life, and it does affect the board. I also like the Maelstrom Pulse, not the best card, but okay here. One thing I will say, I think Pearson beforehand, it was correct for the Jund deck to keep in some of the discard. The Thoughtseize usually went out, but I like the Inquisition of Kozilek, for example, in a matchup like this. But with Bloodbraid Elf entering the equation, discard spells are really awkward haste off Bloodbraid because you're trying to deal with the board. So the question for me is, can Pearson morph his deck to be entirely about board control? Don't worry about the hand. Just deal with what's on the board. Take out all the discard spells. Everything you hit off Bloodbraid deals with something on the board.
Right. On the other side of the table is Steve Locke, of course, and he has a sideboard of his own. Direfleet Daredevil ×1, a pair of Dismember, a pair of Graph Digger's Cage, a Hostage Taker, 2 Is It Staticaster, a Kataki's War's Wage, a Mirror Crusader, 2 Sin Collector, and 2 Zathrid Necromancer.
Excellent spelling on that last
What?
card.
Yeah.
But yeah, here what I like to see from the humans deck is, a quick start is great, but you're on the draw. So the chances of that are massively diminished. So you have to ask yourself the question, okay, how am I lasting into the long game? So Steve is going to have to balance wanting to be the aggressive player with having resilient threats. This is where I like Direfleet Daredevil, a card that doubles as threat and answer. Getting back a Fatal Push happens to be an excellent card against Tarmogoyf and Scavenging Ooze. So the Daredevil definitely coming in, and I think it'll be a very key card. At 3 mana, Daredevil, Fatal Push, or 2-drop. The 2 Dismember is also very good against the Tarmogoyf. The Hostage Taker is the card I'm the least certain about, because you know that Pearson will have a lot of removal and disruption, but being able to untap with the Hostage Taker is good. And then I think the Mirror Crusader comes in, it's a bit awkward against Lightning Bolt, but I also like the Sin Collect, the Zathrid Necromancer, and the Sin Collector to a degree. Sin Collector doesn't deal with Liliana the Last Hope, doesn't deal with Bloodbraid Elf, but it does sometimes nab a key removal spell, so it's an okay card. I think you're going to see Steve's mana curve go a little up, but we may see Steve lose cards. Like, I don't think Medley Mage is good in a matchup where there's a wide swath of removal spells, and I'm not the biggest fan of Aether Vial. Aether Vial is very good in Game 1, and in most matchups, because it allows you to cheat on mana, go fast. But this is a mid-range matchup that might last long. You know that Pearson has Abrupt Decay and Call Against Command if you're land light with a Vial. And every card matters in a matchup like this. And Aether Vial puts you down a card fundamentally. It's kind of a tempo mana
type play, right.
Right.
And that's not what he's looking for here.
I don't believe so.
He needs to be able to go toe for toe, card for card as much as possible, try to go bigger.
Right. Basically, Pearson is prone to flooding with a mid-range deck like Jund. It's a very likely scenario. And Steve can use the fact that he has a much lower land count plus Horizon Canopies to keep drawing threat after threat. So trading 1-for-1 may not work as well for the Jund deck because they need to pull ahead on cards. So if Steve can prevent a quick Dark Confidant, he could actually be ahead on cards just because of land cards. This is similar to what you might see even in a format like Legacy. The Delver decks play low land counts to have high threat counts.
Sure.
Yeah. I think
really curious to see if Steve brings out the vials. Because that is fundamentally, that your point is very sound. And you know that, you have to go toe-to-toe with these cards from Jund, and they have answers for everything you do. There's nothing that he can do, that Jund cannot answer in one way or the other. And he has some really good answers, too, if timed correctly. And, just being down a card even for the tempo gain. Interestingly, though, we did see it be pretty powerful there, just windmill slamming a win on Pearson Laughlin in that first game. And Aether Vial was a part of the equation there. He was able to just empty out his entire hand and overwhelm Pearson before he could use any of the cards in his hand. I mean, he died with 3 or 4 cards in hand. Like, that's card advantage, right?
Of course. One thing is Steve may board out some number of vials. There's also a halfway point. It's okay to not board out all 4, but just board out, like, say, 2. So in some, especially on the draw, it's okay to have a vial. The problem is drawing multiples puts you in a difficult situation. Having 1 is okay, essentially, because your land count is so low that you have to be that's something you need to be careful about.
Okay, looks like players are ready here. Nope, we're going to take a mulligan here from Steve Locke.
Yeah, just 1 land and a bunch of 2 and free drops is not going to do the job.
But Pearson's kept.
Yeah,
he's got to win back-to-back games to take this trophy home. He can certainly do it.
Yeah,
this is a matchup he can win. It doesn't normally go like that.
Well, that's because you don't believe in the power of humans. It was a deck that really took over.
Come on. That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? That's not an average draw.
That was pretty nice, actually.
It was a nice draw, right? I mean,
that's why you play the deck.
Normally you trade a few cards off, and then maybe they're left with something big or something annoying or whatever. But it's not normally like, how much am I taking? It's 13.
What turn are we? Turn free. Okay.
Yeah.
At least I'm catching dinner early.
Right. Nice Tarmogoyf.
Nice Tarmogoyf.
It's cute. Smaller than all my creatures.
Yeah. But yeah, I think how you sideboard in this matchup is actually extremely interesting. So. Like, we've kind of set it up, but I could see the players, I could see Pearson decide to keep in some discard spells. It's worth the risk on Bloodbraid. And I could see Steve keeping in some vials.
All right, we've got a keep here from Steve Locke. Is he going to make it 2 for 2 on GP wins this season?
GP play to GP win ratio?
I might have to try to talk Steve into playing a few more GPs. If he's going to wait a few months in between, you could win even more of them by going to more. Or is it going to be Pearson Laughlin on their side with Jund trying to win back-to-back games and take this trophy home, $10,000? They're both, of course, qualified for the Pro Tour thanks to this. In fact, Pearson said he's glad to be back on the Pro Tour after a lot of near misses. So nice work for that for both of these gentlemen. And we'll be seeing them, I believe, in Richmond for this event.
Yeah, that's the most likely individual Pro Tour.
Right.
But yeah. Here,
that's Pro Tour Dominaria, by the way.
Yeah, excellent. I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yeah.
Actually. We get to play new standard. I'm not a fan of, always old. I like the new.
You like the freshest, newest possible. All right, here's Dark Confidant, the superstar of the semifinals. Boy, that was a sweat. If you weren't here for the semifinals, you should go back and watch that one.
Greatness at any cost.
Any cost. It was great, I'll tell you that.
This is sad.
Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yeah, Steve drew
nothing else on the battlefield.
No, and he drew 2 lands back to back, I believe. We can see that Inquisition of Kozilek plus an Inquisition in Pearson's hand. I believe Pearson didn't go for the full board control plan. He probably valued very highly the ability to nab a Mantis Rider before it was a problem.
Okay.
He also knows that Steve plays Direfleet Daredevil, and that's a really important card to take. Snapcaster Mage is not a card that Jund likes to play against. There's actually a really good inclusion by Steve. I wonder if a third one would be good for people trying to pick up humans. It's a really good mid-range, a really good threat against these mid-range decks.
But yeah, a Lonely Thalia's Lieutenant is not what Steve Locke wants to be doing. That's supposed to be the last card out of his hand. Instead, he leads with it.
Yeah, and the Thalia's Lieutenant is one of those cards that you could also consider boarding out because Jund is trying to trade 1-for-1, and it's a synergy-based card.
Right.
Unlike, say, something like Champion of the Parish, Champion is a 1-drop, and it doesn't require much work to be good, so that's not a card you would cut, but the Lieutenant requires at least 1 or 2 extra creatures, and yeah, just taking the Direfleet Daredevil and so showcasing.
Oh my God,
yeah.
that hand is horrendous for Steve Locke. All lands. At least one of them's a Horizon Canopy, but
Yeah.
not a lot of hope there for him. Now, Pearson, all he needs to do is keep on building out his board and applying pressure, and he may be able to steal this second game back and force a game 3.
Indeed. And yeah, the Horizon Canopy is a key reason why the Humans mana base is so good. You not only have 18 lands, 4 of them can recycle into other cards. Your mana curve is low. You have you essentially have Noble Hierarch, Aether Vial, and 18 lands. You have 26 mana sources. 1 allows you to attack better, 1 recycles, and 1 taps for multiple mana. So I really like the Humans deck's mana base, although Steve decides that he likes it too much and draws a few too many lands here.
He did. Now, he did find, he played the Horizon Canopy, cracked it, and he found a Reflector Mage with it, but he, of course, used his land drop already, so he won't be able to cast that this turn, and he doesn't have any play for the turn otherwise, so he's just going to pass the turn back. Pearson has hit a 1-drop and a 0, so far the cost for greatness has been quite low.
Yeah, that's the greatest cost.
Yeah.
Oh,
Free? Is that your favorite price?
I remember a standard format where people played that Dark Confidant with the cards Hit, Run, and Greater Gargadon, so you could hit 8s or 10s. That was a sweat.
Wow.
But yeah,
risky business.
Yeah, Pearson correctly identifying this Inquisition of Kozilek's not going to do much if I wait longer, so tries to nab a free drop that Steve may have drawn off that Horizon Canopy.
And he did. He hit that Reflector Mage, but it revealed nothing left. The draw step here for Steve, Meddling Mage.
Yeah, Meddling Mage is a little bit of a stranger card to have. Meddling Mage is extremely good against decks that care about one fundamental card. Say you're playing against Storm, naming something like Past in Flames.
Sure.
Or against Tron, naming Oblivion Stone.
Uh-huh.
That's where Meddling Mage is at its best. Linear decks that revolve around one key card that really disrupts you in the matchup. But in a matchup like this, the Jund deck has access to so many. All the cards are different. You have that Abrupt Decay, there's Fatal Push, there's Lightning Bolt, there's Pulse, there's Kolaghan's Command, there's Grim Lavamancer. I mean, there's Anger of the Gods. Like, what are you trying to do? What can you name?
Does he just name Bloodbraid Elf then?
I think so. If you're going to keep Meddling,
just go for the most powerful possible option.
Right. In the dark here, I would I think Bloodbraid Elf is a very good suggestion. You're so low on cards that you just have to hope to strand cards. And yeah, you see Fatal Push here. So you can name Bloodbraid Elf, but this Fatal Push works. Yeah. Or you could have named Lightning Bolt, and this Fatal Push works. Yeah. If you name Fatal Push, that's great, but
then
maybe Pearson
maybe
Pearson has something else in hand.
Yeah.
You know,
and he did, by the way, name Bloodbraid Elf.
Yeah. I think if you keep in Meddling Mage for a matchup like this, Bloodbraid Elf is the card you name for sure.
Yeah, there it goes.
Because you're trying to play against your opponent's grinding plan. I still dislike the presence of Meddling Mage post sideboard, but maybe it was the best of a bad bunch. Although
I got more bad news for you.
Oh my God.
There's another one off the top of the library. It's back. Meddling Mage. Again, I would assume the same.
Yeah, just name Bloodbraid Elf. Keep it up.
It's pretty obvious that Pearson doesn't have a Bloodbraid Elf at this point, but yeah, there's also a Dark Confidant going ham, so.
That's actually true. Pearson could have easily taken a point of damage, 2 points of damage to cast a Bloodbraid. The one scenario where Pearson doesn't is there were no cards on the board.
Oh, if he hits a bolt or a
bolt's okay. You deal free damage. It's a lot.
Fatal Push or something.
Yeah, Fatal Push is about right. Pulse, Anger. You don't get the value. So I can totally understand Pearson not playing Bloodbraid Elf. Also, conserving 2 life can be important with the Dark Confidant. But yeah, Lightning Bolt takes care. Other than Meddling Mage, 2 damage in. That Treetop Village looks innocent, but is anything but.
There's a term that's cropped up in the Magic community called getting Junded out. And that is exactly what's happening, right? Like, Pearson is just dealing with every single card that Steve plays, just leveraging that Dark Confidant, which finally has died, by the way, to a Dismember, but there's no backup for it. So it's just stemming the bleeding. But, I mean, Pearson was just firing off anything. It's just, I have a removal spell. You have a creature. I'll kill that.
Right.
Just kill that.
That's
kill
how
that.
it works.
I don't, if it's a 2/2 that doesn't even affect my hand at all, I'm just kill that. Because he just has more resources, and he's just chipping away for 2 every turn. And now here comes Treetop Village into the red zone. And this is the essence of
Tarmogoyf.
getting Junded out, and now there's a Goyf
and that's going to call it. Steve got very unfortunate in drawing so many lands, but I think at the same time that Steve decided to keep in his deck too many, what I would say individually weak cards, like Meddling Mage, or synergy-based cards like Lieutenant, or Fali's Lieutenant. And here you can see that punishment. What did Steve play? A 1/1 for 2.
Yeah.
A 2/2 for 2. A 2/2 for 2. These are not cards.
No, here's a 1/1 for 1.
Well, that's good enough. Let's go. Wait.
He can just fire up Treetop Village and get in there. Steve's double-checking to make sure that the Goyf is actually at 4.
Yeah, and Pearson has the deck list, so he knows there's no funny business coming up.
That's right. Yeah, and, that is one thing that we should mention here as well about the Humans deck is that, it is not great at coming from behind. It is very much a kind of get ahead, maintain this board state, and close the deal right now type deck. It's not one of these decks. I mean, look at what you mentioned it. 2/2 for 2, 2/2 for 2, 1/1 for 1, 1/1 for 2, right? Like, these are not the cards that you want to see when you're behind. So Steve Locke has a lot of pressure on his mulligans here to have a hand that can actually get out ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I literally described to you a deck that would be terrible and limited.
Yes, awful. Bunch of bears and whatnot.
Yeah, that was a horrible deck. You're already wondering what's going on. But yeah, and that's the problem. Steve decided to play a limited deck in a modern tournament in this game, so that's not really where you want to be. And I think that's why. But I didn't see Aethervial, and on the play, these synergy cards do get a lot better. While the Jund deck can trade 1 for 1, it does need a maximum of its cheap cards to do so. It's also possible here in this match that Steve was worried about Anger of the Gods. Zaphrid Necromancer is an excellent card against sweepers. Exception, Anger of the Gods exiles everything.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Steve might have been concerned that the Necromancer would only be essentially the equivalent of Kitchen Finks, a 2/2 that makes a 2/2 as it dies. So he probably didn't board it in. We haven't seen it, and there's a possibility he didn't board it in because he has a lot of free drops, and it doesn't really match against Anger, the sweeper, and it's not a resilient threat in the way he wants with a lot of free drops. So maybe that was a card he didn't like, and he wanted to keep the Meddling Mage to kind of try to avoid a Bloodbraid Elf on turn 4, so keep it till turn 3 on the draw, and then name Bloodbraid Elf. And then use the Lieutenant to, at some point, put a creature to a 4/4, and that's harder to, since that's not as easy to deal with. Lightning Bolt doesn't. Fatal Push and Abrupt Decay or Maelstrom Pulse would be needed. Anger also doesn't get the job done. So I think keep the Lieutenant. The idea is to make a 4/4 creature that is resilient to much more of Jund's removal. However, you've seen it there. Inquisition of Kozilek.
Sure.
Lightning Bolt. Fatal Push. There's no need for Bloodbraid Elf. Your opponent just played a bunch of 2/2s for 2, so it's easy to win that way.
Yeah.
So I think Steve's plan should be a little less synergy-based and focus on the fact that the human creatures can be good on their own. Mantis Rider, excellent beater. Mirran Crusader needs a Lightning Bolt, otherwise it's going to town. Kitesail Freebooter, Disruption, Tiny Aggression. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. It's a 2/1 first striker. Excellent against a swath of Pearson's suite. You may not have drawn these cards, but I think by filling your deck with Meddling Mages and Fali's Lieutenants, you're putting yourself in a position to get Junded out.
Let's see what happens here in game number 3. This is going to be our decider here in Phoenix. Thanks so much for coming along. If you're just tuning in, well, you made it in time for the last game of the finals. We're getting to game 3 between Pearson Laughlin, who's playing Jund, against Steve Locke, who's on Humans. To be perfectly honest, 2 kind of non-games. The first game was just a smashing by Steve Locke, and in game 2, Pearson Laughlin had Inquisition of Kozilek and a Dark Confidant, and that Dark Confidant stuck on the board for 4 or 5 turns, and that was it. He just killed everything on the other side and ground down Steve Locke's life total, who had really a miserable draw that game.
Yeah, a lot of lands for sure.
Yeah.
I like the recognition from Pearson to keep the Confidant in. Essentially on the play, you're going to be lower on cards, and he understands that this matchup is about board control. And in a board control matchup, Dark Confidant excels. You get a lot more cards that allow you to trade 1 for 1. It allows you to pull ahead. And without that Dark Confidant, Pearson I think he would have been favored based on these draws, but he might have fallen behind. And Dark Confidant's ability to essentially draw cards and allow these 1 for 1 trades is very powerful. And also, it trades for some of Steve Locke's creatures, so it's okay. A 2/1 body can sometimes get in the way. I really liked Pearson's sideboard plan. We were discussing about removing the Inquisitions, but I think Pearson understands that if a Bloodbraid Elf hits, he's probably far ahead. So he's okay with the possibility of hitting an Inquisition of Kozilek as kind of a low point from that Bloodbraid because it's too important to have access to that card otherwise.
All right, players are examining their opening hands here. Who's it going to be? Pearson Laughlin on Jund or Steve Locke on Humans? I'll remind you, Steve Locke won the last GP he played a few months ago at GP Minneapolis. He played Zombies in Standard and took down the whole thing. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll go out and play another GP. Boom, he's in the finals and he's one game away on the play against Jund, and we are underway. Champion of the Parish is the first play here for Steve Locke, his ideal opener.
Yeah, and I really liked he had the choice between the Champion of the Parish. We're going to be able to see this here now. Champion of the Parish and Noble Hierarch, and you can see that how much he values aggression. The mana from Noble Hierarch, not that important compared to making sure you get counters on that champion and try to make it get out of hand as quick as possible. But wow, Pearson values hand disruption so much that he kept in Thoughtseize.
Wow. A card that deals damage to him, and it only has to be, like, the Inquisitions hit everything, right?
Yeah, the Inquisition basically takes everything.
It has to be the fourth.
It's the fifth. Higher. It's the fifth. He actually runs 4 Inquisitions. This 5th, 6th. He values hand disruption and 1-for-1 trading that much.
Wow.
He probably sees the Dire Fleet Daredevil as an issue. So I mean, it is an issue in this matchup. So he takes it here. Definitely the correct pick. Everything. The Dismember could be an issue, but he could discard it before deploying one of his threats. And here Steve is essentially going to go for Noble Hierarch and attack for free damage.
Yep, get in there. Exalted Trigger plus the counter is 3, down to 15 already for Pearson Laughlin. It's only turn 2. But the bad news for Steve Locke is he is out of gas. In his hand, he has Dismember and a pair of lands.
Yeah,
so
and
I believe they're Horizon Canopies.
Yeah, so there's some time to cycle, but that gives Pearson time.
Yeah.
The other thing is, Dismember is the card you want in this matchup. I think Steve is correct to board it in. But this is the problem with a lot of these aggro decks bringing in reactive cards against mid-range decks like this, is the mid-range deck clearly has a role. I'm going to deal with the board first, and then I'm going to win from there. Because of that, Dismember is meant to be as a push against a blocker. However, it's not a threat. It's not dealing damage right now. The Dismember to be effective has to be something that deals damage to Pearson ultimately. Like if it kills a Tarmogoyf, then it's dealing damage. If it's killing a Scavenging Ooze that's in the way, it's also dealing damage. But because it's just stuck in his hand, so you can see Canopy, Dismember. There's a Thalia's Guardian of Thraben that was drawn, and that's going to be pretty important here. Threat plus Disruption. Again, the human package is right there.
Right. Now, we may see Pearson respond here if he does have multiple removal spells. You know, he can have a Lightning Bolt and a push or something along these lines. He may want to act now. He also just may have Fatal Push and want to get a tap land from his Foothills, for example.
There
we go. He's going to use Fatal Push right now. That's with the Thalia Guardian of Thraben on the stack. It means that he's taking 1 damage this turn rather than 4.
Yeah, and he could, so somebody may have noticed that he could have done this in combat, so once the Exalted Trigger was done, but Pearson was probably trying to evaluate with his fetch land, do I want a dual land or not?
Sure.
And his answer here seems to be, yes, I want a dual. So in that case, well, rather than taking 2 by taking an untapped dual, I'll take 1 from this Noble Hierarch attack, which may actually not happen. Steve might
that was interesting. He actually wants to crack the Horizon Canopy instead, it looks like. Yeah, Pearson, you are going to want to crack that Wooded Foothills. Make sure that you take as little damage as possible. Boy, did he find out in game number 1 when all of a sudden Steve Locke was attacking for 13 damage out of nowhere. So there it is, stomping ground, all 3 colors now for Pearson Laughlin as he goes to his 3rd turn here in game number 3.
Yeah, and
baby.
I kind of like this from Steve. He's giving up a point of damage, but he realizes he's not winning this game with what he has in play, most likely. So he's going to have to develop his board, and the best way to do so is to make sure to crack that Canopy end of turn, move into your next turn with 4 mana between your land and your lands and your Hierarch, and be able to redeploy your board. The Thalia protecting your board in a way. I really like this line from Steve. He understands that he needs board control. He doesn't have it, and this gives him the best chance of getting there.
Big turn here for Pearson Laughlin. He so far has been able to keep Steve Locke off of anything insane. Dark Confidant. And Pearson Laughlin has a tap land and passes, so draw a card from Horizon Canopy for Steve Locke on end step. No, he's just going to go for Dismember, he does have to leave up the extra mana to pay for it if he wants as well. So Dark Confidant not going to stick around or even draw one single card for him.
That I was a little less of a fan. I understand why Steve did it here in case he drew a free drop. But I kind of think he could have sacked the Horizon Canopy here to try to go ahead. But I understand that the possibility of drawing a free drop is too attractive. Yeah, you're forced to take Anger here unless you believe that Pearson doesn't have another red source.
Right, which, well, he doesn't.
Well, that we can see. Oh, wait. Yeah, that we can see literally. He doesn't have a red source.
Yeah, he just straight up doesn't have it. Now, there's a lot of red sources in his deck, and he is still being left with a Lightning Bolt. But sometimes this delay can be all you need. But I'll tell you what, if Pearson Laughlin finds a red source and he can go, take a turn to bolt the freebooter and then just untap and cast Anger, that could be the game.
Yeah, and this is actually a really hard pick. With Thalia, Guardian of Faerun, Pearson can use any of his 1-mana removal spells in Lightning Bolt or Abrupt Decay. So if you take one of those, he can just use the other one and then Anger later. So he's taking the cheaper card because Lightning Bolt with any land would allow Tarmogoyf plus Bolt, which I think is okay. You could also take the line of Anger, forcing Pearson to use the Abrupt Decay or the Lightning Bolt on the Kitesail Freebooter and putting him down the maximum amount of cards in this scenario.
Ooh, this is a big draw step here for Pearson.
Definitely is. A land
is key. If he finds an untapped red source...
Oh, I mean, the game is massively in his favor.
It's just a huge swing in his direction. Did he draw it?
Right. But the thing here is, even a Tarmogoyf is pretty good. Steve...
Sure.
It would gum up the ground. Steve would be able to attack for 2. But, again, Steve gets to draw 2 cards, so that's a loose statement because, again, he could get there. Oh, this looks... Let's see what it is.
Yeah, it could be a fetch land.
Well, I mean, I think if it was a fetch land, we'd already be seeing Pearson looking through his library.
I don't know. He was thinking. All right, it is a Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf's at 4/5 right now. Looking pretty good. So Steve Locke is going to draw a card from Horizon Canopy, but he does need to find some way to get through this Goyf. Sure, he can chip away in the air with the freebooter, but that clock is not super fast. Well, maybe I spoke too soon. I think he drew another Noble Hierarch here.
It's still not super fast. It's there.
Yeah,
it exists.
Damage, it's something.
The problem is Abrupt Decay happens to be very good against a single Exalted Threat.
Right, of course.
Since Steve decides the attack, and then you go, okay, I'll Abrupt Decay that. Ooh,
he drew Dismember.
Which member?
Yeah, that member. And I think that's going to be very good here. Now, he does have enough mana to cast it too, right? He's got the Hierarch plus. Can he use that Unclaimed Territory? Yeah, of course, right? So get the Goyf out of the way?
I believe he has a land in hand as well.
Okay.
So he can actually deploy his whole hand here, which I believe is what we're going to see here.
This is getting interesting.
Land, Hierarch, tap both Hierarch plus the land to Dismember. Just tap your mana, essentially.
Sure, just tap out, get rid of the Goyf.
And then, well, actually you just attack with Thalia.
Yeah, it's just 4 damage, right?
Yeah.
Can't be killed with just the 1 land left back, so...
So the Dismember was a decent draw, but it's not really changing the clock fundamentally, and that's why Steve is considering, do I actually want to play this Noble Hierarch or not?
Because he's still worried about the Anger of the Gods?
Yeah, but I think he's making the right call. He can't beat that Anger. I cannot win against Anger of the Gods.
He's all in. No more cards left in his hand. Boy, can Pearson Laughlin find an untapped red mana here and potentially lock up this GP?
But he needs it this turn. Next turn would not be good enough because a lot of Pearson's red mana comes into play at the cost of life.
He's past the turn back. Yeah. He cannot find red mana.
Yeah. But this is actually pretty okay because Pearson has access to Abrupt Decay.
Okay, so he will blank an attack here.
The other thing he'll have to decide, though, is do you kill the freebooter or the Thalia here? Steve is definitely attacking with the Thalia.
The damage, it's 1 difference in damage?
It's not just that. It's also, if you do it on the freebooter, then you give him the Lightning Bolt back, and that's a perfect 2-turn sequence, which is just awful for you. Interestingly, Steve doesn't play the Noble Hierarch because he believes Pearson will Abrupt Decay the Thalia.
So it doesn't matter anyway, and that's exactly what happened. Steve's going to keep that Hierarch in hand and pass the turn back. What did he find? It looked like a Inquisition or something.
Yeah, that's not.
Yeah, that's what it was. So he is actually going to lose the Noble Hierarch here.
And that way,
there's Dark Confidant. He's going to pass a turn back. Pearson hanging on at 7.
Yeah.
And this is an attack for 3.
This might have looked awkward to not play the Hierarch, but Steve was thinking of rebuilding after an anger because of Pearson's low life total.
Did he find a meddling mage?
Yeah.
He knows about the anger of the gods.
Well, that's the card that's being named. This Freebooter plus meddling mage is the reason to do it.
So now what does Pearson need to do? Now he needs to find an answer for the freebooter and then just bolt the meddling mage?
Because of the Exalted triggers, there's still not too much of a clock. So he needs to not die to this
He
Dark
also needs to
Confidant.
not hit a Bloodbraid Elf right here. All right, he hit a land, but it was not a red mana source.
It also deals 2 damage.
It does indeed if he wants to play it untapped. Oh, man, Pearson makes me nervous. Every time we have him on camera, he's got a Dark Confidant when he's almost dead.
Yeah, he really wants an instant speed removal spell so that the he can blank the Exalted triggers and kill this freebooter. Scavenging Ooze.
Ooh, Scavenging Ooze can certainly help out.
Steve needs
especially
1
with
damage to
multiple
win right
resource,
now.
and he can't find it.
Actually 2. The Scavenging Ooze does gain life.
Yes, it does. And there's plenty of creatures to eat here for that Scavenging Ooze as well. This is an attack for 3 that could put Pearson Laughlin down to 1 life.
Yeah. Pearson really wants to draw a Lightning Bolt or a Fatal Push here. Both of those cards would be exceptional.
Now, Eduardo, so he's going to eat a creature here before he goes back to his turn, and there's going to be a Dark Confidant trigger on the stack. Is he going to eat some creatures then as well, maybe preventing him from casting some spells, but also keeping his life higher?
Yeah, I believe so. Because you cannot win, you cannot cast this Anger of the Gods anyways in anything but the most unlikely scenarios, like
Mountain?
Mountain does not exist. That's a key reason
okay,
why.
fair enough, yeah.
Right, so here I think Pearson should be aiming to grow the Scavenging Ooze pretty aggressively, looking to leave at least 2 mana, if not free. The thing is, a free drop at this point would essentially kill him. So I think it's okay to eat 1 more card, because you know that a free mana card off Confidant would kill you.
Oh, he's just going for it right here. Oh, it's Bloodbraid Elf! And Steve Locke secures his 2nd GP in a row. The last 2 that he's played, Steve Locke has won. Incredible stuff from Steve. And boy, Laughlin, live by the sword, die by the sword. You know what they say?
Greatness at any
at
cost.
any cost, my friend. And sometimes that cost is your life. You know, that happens sometimes. He said, Bloodbraid Elf, the hype was real, and he wasn't kidding.
You know what? Bloodbraid Elf ending the tournament is exactly how it was meant to be.
You know, I think that Laughlin probably would have thought that Bloodbraid Elf would end the tournament one way or the other. As it turned out, that's exactly what happened. Welcome back to the booth here at GP Phoenix. That's Eduardo. I'm Marshall. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. We're actually going to have a little chat here with Steve Locke in just a moment. But for the time being, big picture stuff.
Sure.
Jund versus humans in the finals, but we had a very diverse top 8 here.
Right. The top 8 featured 8 different archetypes, 2 Jace deck, 2 Bloodbraid Elf decks, green-white taxes, Bring to Light Scapeshift, Blue Moon, the double
Tron.
Vizier Nightfall,
Yeah,
Ironworks combo.
yes.
And not just the top 8, throughout the tournament, we've seen Dredge fall before the top 8. Well, we saw them, just about to get there. A lot of big the story to start the weekend, a lot of big mana decks.
Big mana for sure.
When I walked the tables, tons of Tron, tons of Eldrazi Tron. At the end of the tournament, though, those decks were falling by the wayside to people that were prepared. The combo players were clearly going to be beating Tron. We saw the Taxes deck. Tectonic Edge, Ghost Quarter, Linen Arbiter await to fight the Tron Menace.
That's right. It's pretty hard to get those lands set up. Hey, we've got an interview lined up with Steve Locke right now. Steve, congratulations. Marshall Sutcliffe and Eduardo Sajgalik in the booth. Great work. The last time I saw you, you won a GP that time, too.
Yeah.
It's actually insane, man. That's really impressive.
Yeah, these are the last 2 individual GPs I played at once.
It's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
So what do I need to do to convince you to play more GPs, Steve?
I don't know. I definitely should. So the first time I didn't even play enough to have enough buys for the other GPs. But now that I got some buys and having a pretty good time, so
your average finish is first. So
yeah.
Hey, so you ended up playing humans this time. We knew that you played zombies last time. Some similarities between them, tribal kind of quick decks. Why did you choose humans for this tournament?
I think it's a top 5 deck in Modern, and I really like those creature decks that can kind of put pressure on your opponent, but also just have the tools to turn into a control or mid-range deck.
Sure.
Similar to how Zombies was going, but that is kind of my favorite play style. And I think Humans is just top 5 modern deck, and yeah, I ran with it.
Man, that game one, by the way, that explosive
Oh
draw
yeah,
that
when I drew
gosh.
when I drew that third land for that Mana Spider, that was maximum pressure.
it was like 13 damage out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
he's just like, but I played a Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
why do you get to have bigger creatures?
Yeah.
It didn't seem fair. Game 2 went horrendously for you, drew a ton of lands there, but wow, Game 3 really delivered. That was an exciting finish, huh?
Yeah, very much was. I did catch the end of the Matt Nass game too, so I know you live by the sword, die by the sword type of action there. So I'm glad I was the one who got the victory. As opposed to Matt,
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah, I think Laughlin's going to need to take an extra few hours of sleep tonight. He had a stressful day with those Dark Confidants, no doubt about it. So this cues you for the Pro Tour as well, Steve. This is for Richmond Pro Tour Dominaria. We're going to see you there.
Yeah, definitely.
Man, we got to get you to come out to more GPs, dude.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, congratulations once again. You are our champion here in Phoenix. Great work, and we'll see you around sooner than later, I hope. Eduardo, fantastic stuff, right? I mean, how awesome is that? The guy just plays 2 GPs and just wins them both? That's unheard of.
I mean, this is harkening back to some of the players in the past that decide they like an archetype.
Yes.
He was very, we mentioned the similarity with his other GP win, and he reiterated it. Essentially, he likes these disruption creature decks that can morph into mid-range / control. And I suspect he piloted them very well throughout the tournament, navigating these creature-on-creature matchups.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really fun to watch. A super diverse top 8, but that is, of course, going to do it for us here from Phoenix. Wanted to say thank you to the staff and the judges that help make these tournaments possible. Anybody who's played in one of these things knows they don't run without the judges and the event staff, and we're very grateful to them for the help that they gave us today, as well as we had some issues, as you knew. Thank you so much for your patience, and, of course, we wanted to say thank you to you for joining us here on the stream. We had a great time bringing you coverage of Modern here from GP Phoenix. So thanks for hanging out. For Brian David Marshall, Jacob Van Loon, and Eduardo Sajglik, I'm Marshall Sutcliffe saying we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.